Hey everybody, Chuck Barone. Wednesday, November the 1st, 2023. Rounding into the home stretch of this year, 2023. I don't know if I'm the only one, but it seems like this year went by so fast, man. Wow, is it quick. I'm too old to let these years go by so friggin' fast, man, but here we come into the home stretch of the fourth quarter. Fascinating times we're living in. Lots to talk about today. Before I get rolling, as always, let me welcome everybody to the show and thank you guys for your support. You guys hanging in there with us, watching these videos, your likes, your comments and questions, and all the stuff you guys do every day. We appreciate it. We couldn't do it without you guys. All right, so let's talk about these markets today. As we all know, today was Fed Day. The Federal Reserve concluding their two-day meeting, their open market committee meeting, and holding interest rates steady as widely predicted by Wall Street. The Fed not pulling very many surprise moves these days, pretty much telegraphing everything. So the Fed holds rates steady. We're probably going to see a little bit more inflation as a result of that, but the markets liked it today, so the markets rally. Nice day for the markets. The stock market jumping, the Dow up 221 points to 33,274. The NASDAQ really jumps, plus 210 points. That's sitting at 13,061 points, a nice rally there. The S&P coming up 44 points, now at 4,237, so across the board, stocks up today. This is doing a little bit of repair work to everybody's, investment portfolios, their 401ks, what have you, because it just has been a horrible month. But nice to finish the last one on a little bit of a swing up and to start this new month with a little bit of swing up in stocks too. Stocks ultimately are all about earnings, right? There's always that little bit of outside stuff that really kind of adds a little bit of cloudy uncertainty to the markets, but the underlying thing the markets always are all about is earnings. How much is a company earning and what is the price of their stock in relation to that earning? Pretty simple stuff, right? So Wall Street's celebrating today because earnings still going good, not another rate increase in their face. So a reason to celebrate and buy stocks today. Bond market also rallies. People buying bonds today, I guess, kind of figuring, like I am, that we're probably done raising rates now. The Fed's showing today they probably got no more guts for raising rates. So the bond market rallies today. The 10-year falls 8 basis points, sitting at 4.79%. The 2-year really comes down 11 basis points to 4.96%. So now we've only got 17 basis point inversion. The market, the bond yields continuing to flatten out. Honestly, I was surprised to see the 2-year come back under 5. I thought it was more likely that the 10-year would go over 5. We're not through this cycle yet, but right now it looks like, at least for one day, rates trending down. The dollar today down very small, just 4 basis points, still the king of the hill, 106.63. A good strong number for the dollar. I know it was a lot higher for just a minute. Earlier, was it earlier this year or last year when it actually went as high as 114 on the index? Haven't seen numbers like that recently on the dollar, but 106 is still pretty strong. It's forcing gold and silver down a little bit. I think they'd be making new highs right now if it weren't for a strong dollar. Today, gold falls. Gold down $5.60. Sitting at $1,977.70 for an ounce of gold. Still a good, strong price. Silver unchanged today. No change in price. $22.83 for an ounce of silver. So gold and silver holding their own as far as in relation to where they were in their highs at $25 for silver and $2,000 for gold. They're pretty close. And I think once this dollar comes down to earth, and like I say, it always does, you're going to see a big spike in gold and silver. Oil today down very small, just 10 cents a barrel. Continuing the downward trend in oil, though, now at $80.92 per barrel. There was a lot of talk about $100 per barrel oil. It does not look like that is going to happen, at least right now. And don't get me wrong, guys. This war in the Middle East could at any time change and change the whole picture with oil and everything else in these markets. But as it stands right now, oil coming down. Bitcoin today up just a little bit, up $129, sitting at $34,780. I was reading an interesting article in Forbes today. They were saying that Bitcoin, when these ETFs get off the ground, and there's a real market for Bitcoin, that Bitcoin could jump as high as $150,000 per Bitcoin. I didn't have time to really go through the whole article, but I intend to read it and see who's writing that article. Are they somebody pushing crypto, or is it really a Forbes analyst, or who's writing it, and what in the heck? But they're thinking big things could be on the horizon for Bitcoin with these ETFs. All right, so let's talk about news today. The number one topic, one everybody kind of waiting for, Jerome Powell, Federal Reserve, the March of the Mediocrities. Well, they had their meeting. Like I was saying yesterday, they had lunch and a nice cocktail party, probably a nice dinner somewhere. And they ended up holding rates steady, completely chickening out, failing to raise rates to beat back this inflation. All of the numbers, at least the numbers I'm seeing, top line inflation, core inflation, jobs, wages, costs, everything's still way out of line for the Fed. But I think what's happened is this bond debacle and the spike in bond yields without any help from the Fed, thank you, U.S. Treasury, has kind of given the Fed a little bit of an idea that these markets are going to correct everything themselves by raising rates, and they don't really have to do anything else. I just don't think it's going to work out that way. What's interesting is at his presser after this meeting, Powell said that the Fed was moving with caution. So you got to look for these words they use, right? So translation to that, meaning the Fed will not beat the economy down to fight inflation. Caution means we're cautious. They're going to try to manage to beat this inflation down without causing a recession. I tell you, it's impossible. Okay? So the Fed, in my mind, chicken shit. Okay? You're serious about fighting inflation. You're serious about bringing the numbers back down to 2% or less. You're raising rates here, man. You're raising that quarter point. And if the markets don't like it, tough crap. The consumer going to like it when inflation starts coming down. When inflation goes away, we might even see some prices on stuff that's gone up like crazy start coming back down. Deflation, oh my God. Scary word to the government, a great word to people who got to spend money every day to live. So the Fed, they're feeling like they're pretty confident. They've got this job well in hand. I tell you, man, I got my doubts. They've shown now a couple meetings in a row that they're basically scared to raise rates higher. The economy, in my mind, still looks pretty strong. Apparently the Fed's seeing something I'm not seeing because they're certainly afraid to ding the economy worse. Maybe it's real estate. Maybe they know what's happening with commercial. They don't want the residential to, go down that same hole. I don't know, but I just know that I think they made an error the last two meetings by not raising rates. Moving on from the Fed, I'll have more on this tomorrow, by the way, and when they release Powell's comments from after during at his presser, it was just too fresh. By the time I wrote all this up, there wasn't enough data, enough information released on that, transcripts or whatever, to really give a good commentary. We'll talk a little bit more about Powell tomorrow. Also, we're going to get some really important data tomorrow, so it's going to be a huge day. If there's one thing that happened today I want to bring to everybody's attention, man. Front page of the Wall Street Journal today. Realtors lose antitrust suit over high fees. Okay, so here we have, let me give you guys the background. It's a class action antitrust suit that the National Association of Realtors, along with several very large real estate companies, Berkshire Hathaway, RE/MAX, and several others, conspired to keep commissions and fees higher than they should be. Now, what they were specifically attacking was the seller's obligation to pay the cost for both his own and the buyer's real estate agents. The way real estate typically works, the seller of a property will typically have to pay between 4 and 6% commission of the sale of the property to satisfy his listing agent, who's going to list that property, market it, advertising it, show it, and do everything for him. And then the other half going to the buyer's agent, who actually produces the buyer to buy the house, right? And this has been the way ever since I've been in real estate and longer that real estate has been done, okay? The idea being the seller, typically cashing out at a pretty healthy profit, can afford to pay these commissions, as opposed to the buyer, who has to figure out how to come up with a down payment, closing costs, and then moving it in and everything else that goes with buying a new place. So the system has worked, and it's worked very, very well. But now sellers deciding they don't want to pay for these buyers' agents anymore. And this lawsuit, the fine, the penalty, $1.8 billion. 1.8. So they're really just going to try to destroy the real estate industry is what they're going to do. Because the judge has the ability on his own decision to triple those damages. That would be over $5 billion. Now, what these sellers forgot to mention when they were making their case about how they were so ripped off and had to pay for the buyer's agent, and that is so unfair because buyers don't really need an agent. They can just go right online and buy a house. Yeah, okay. Buyers now are expected to, number one, be able to negotiate a price without having any background in real estate. They're supposed to understand how a home inspection works, how an appraisal works, how it protects them, what should they be looking for. Now they need to understand contract law. Okay, you're buying a house, there's a pretty hefty contract attached to that. The listing agent on the seller side is going to know what he's talking about. Is the buyer prepared to deal with that? He's going to have to go through all of the process of being the buyer, dealing with his mortgage company, getting the financing in place, and then actually closing. And he's going to be closing without the help of an agent. And he's expected to know everything there is about that and making sure he's not getting screwed at the very end there. The buyers are going to get screwed. The realtors are going to get screwed. The sellers forgot to mention that when they bought the house that they're selling and they had to pay the buyer's fees, well, guess what? When they were the buyer, the person they bought the house from paid their realtor fees. They forgot to mention that in the lawsuit, right? So it's kind of, even though it might look at first glance a little bit unfair, it really is not a terrible system because when you're the buyer, when you buy your first house, you don't have to pay your real estate agent 3%. The seller does that for you, okay? And I'm telling you right now, there's no buyer's agent going to show a house without knowing what he's going to get paid for it. Not going to happen. Not when he can go and know he's going to get 3% over here. I mean, this lawsuit and the logic behind it is an absolute disaster for the real estate industry. And it's going to be an absolute disaster for real estate agents. Because what's going to end up happening? We already know that buyers cannot afford to pay their own agents. Sellers now are going to try to chisel down the listing agents. They're trying to make it where anybody can list on the multiple listing services, so they can list their house without actually hiring a realtor. I got to see how that works. It's just going to be a catastrophe because what's going to happen is the seller's going to agree to pay his agent 2 to 3%, whatever they agree on. If the buyer's agent, the buyer wants that house and wants to buy it, and his agent cannot negotiate a fee from that seller, or from that buyer, from his own buyer, what's going to happen is the buyer and the seller agents are going to end up splitting the seller's side. So they're going to go from a 6% splitting 6% or 5 to splitting 2 or 3. Okay? So basically another vehicle for ordinary people to do well in this world taken away, gone. And realtors don't know it yet, but they're about to get the pay cut of the century. Anyway, guys, that's it for today. I appreciate your guys' support. We will be back tomorrow with lots of details. Had a jump in job openings today, too. We'll talk about that tomorrow. All kind of stuff going on, man. Big, big doings. As always, again, we'll be back tomorrow to bring you the news you need. If you can, please hit the like button. It changes the algorithms. It gets our video out in front of more people. Hit me up with your comments and questions as always. We'll be back tomorrow to bring you guys the news you need. Till then, guys, take care. Thanks.